I'm Jackie Matranga.
And I'm Candice Herrera.
And we did our multimedia presentation on intercultural friendships.
The problem often seen in cross-cultural friendships are the differences in culture, differences, set of beliefs, value, and religion. This becomes a problem when these variables start to clash. One must then decide how to react to being exposed to a completely different culture other than his or her own. According to Lee's article in the Journal of Intercultural Communications Research, scholars have found that members involved in intercultural friendships have to deal not only with the challenges that exist with intercultural friendships, values, interests, personality traits, and changes, but also the problems emerging from internal and external relational dialects, cultural differences, and possible language barriers between the interactants.
The context for our topic is the United States, which is, of course, a giant melting pot. Historically, there have always been cultural tensions, whether big or small. But as years pass, more and more people are slowly growing out of their comfort zones and becoming close friends with people of other ethnic backgrounds. Some research questions guiding this research project are: do differences in culture and traditions increase conflict within friend groups? Do friends feel comfortable disclosing their differences with each other? Is it possible to live in harmony and have best friends from other cultures?
We interviewed 5 college-age women of different cultures from the same friend circle. We asked them a series of questions pertaining to living as a minority in the United States and how it has affected their friendships cross-culturally.
The purpose of this study is to identify the similarities and differences across cultures and examine what exactly it is that makes these friendships work.
As a young child, growing up in an American elementary school, and being Hispanic, it was tough for me to really identify myself with the American culture and the Hispanic culture, because coming to school every single day, I couldn't just speak Spanish to my friends because they didn't know what Spanish was. And you know, Spanish culture, just food, like sometimes my mom would pack lunch for me and they would be like, ew, what is that? What is a taco? And I would be like, oh, well, this is what we eat at home every single day. And I didn't really understand how to communicate, I'm Mexican, this is my culture, this is what we do, this is normal. Going to school, carrying a sandwich in your lunchbox, that was normal. Not carrying a taco wrapped in foil, that was not normal. So I didn't really understand how to communicate that to my friends. Part of my childhood, it was harder for me to identify with my Mexican culture. I kind of wanted to be identified more as an American. But now, as I'm getting older, I understand how to communicate those differences, and I understand what culture is, and I understand what my personal culture is, which is Mexican culture. And I have friends now that understand that and can relate to it, can relate to the differences, and we can all just be the bestest of friends because they understand that we don't all have to be from the same culture, speak the same language, or have the same values. We can all be friends. We can all share all those fun foods and languages. For example, my roommates are now my best friends, and we all write a fun word on the dry erase board, and we love to learn each other's culture. We bring food, and you know, it's fun learning about each other's cultures. You know, our family values are very much instilled, and being with your family is very important on New Year's. Being surrounded, welcoming the new year with your family is the most important thing.
I wasn't really allowed to date until I was older and younger. She never really allowed me to talk about guys and bring guys over because of how, you know, she was raised. I'm Muslim, so my mom wants me to bring home a Muslim guy. For me to try and find a Muslim guy in a Christian society is really difficult because, of course, there's not that many. And it's a challenge for me, you know, not being Christian and not exactly fitting in with everyone else because that's what everyone practices. Even though I don't celebrate Christmas, we still, you know, we'll get together and we'll exchange gifts, and I'll take part in that because I know how important it is, you know, to celebrate Christmas with them. So, you know, I set aside my own beliefs, and I'm willing to, you know, celebrate with them and take part in this important religious holiday with them. Coming from a group of friends that were brought up from different cultures and you know, different religions, even though, yeah, it might be so black and white, but yet we bring those differences to the table, and it's what makes our friendship so unique and interesting because we learn a lot from each other.
My parents expect me to bring home 100% Hindu, Indian, last name Patel, and the customs of a Leva Patel. It's like a kind of Patel Indian guy home, and he can't be like anything different than that. With my friends, it's actually really easy to expose them to my culture. They're really open to the food.
With my friends, I mean, it's not, honestly, we don't even, I feel like we don't even think about the fact that I'm like a different race, which is kind of weird. But I mean, I try and tell them about my culture sometimes. Like, they'll ask me questions. Like, I take them out to pho. I've taken out friends to eat pho for the first time ever, and I've been able to like show them a little bit. But at the same time, like, we still just have like a regular friendship because it's not something that we think about, you know, because it's just like I'm just me and they're just them, yeah, and we're just friends. So.
Weddings for us are a big deal. When I came here, I've been to some American weddings, and that was kind of a shock to me because here, an American wedding is kind of, you go to the reception, you eat, there's a little bit of dancing, and then the bride and groom like leave at early hours. It's like a decent hour. But for example, when it was time for us to plan my sister's wedding and my brother's wedding, one of the biggest problems was finding a venue that would stay open late enough. Because in my culture, we stay up. The wedding might start at 7 o'clock, but we don't go to sleep till like 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, to the point where you serve breakfast at weddings. And the bride and groom don't leave right away. They stay, and then they leave for the honeymoon like maybe 2 days, 3 days later. So for example, one of the big things is like at 12 o'clock, they call it the crazy hour. And it's kind of like a Mardi Gras thing where like the bridal party comes out, and our traditional music, which is drums, they have like a drums band come and play, and then the bridal party starts handing out like party favors and like masquerade stuff, and people just dance and go crazy till like 2 o'clock in the morning, and then it kind of dies down, and they serve breakfast, and it's just weird because when I go to an American wedding, it's kind of like, okay, just calm and celebrating something, but our weddings get pretty wild.
What would you like your friends to understand more about your culture? Do you feel like they do a good job of understanding it and you expressing it to them?
Yeah, I feel like all of my friends, I'm surrounded by a great group of friends, which we all come from different cultures, so we kind of have to bend ourselves to understand each other, because if not, we would not be able to be as good of friends as we are. So it's great that I can explain myself to my friends, and any type of things that are different, we understand. In my culture, we stay up. The wedding might start at 7 o'clock, but we don't go to sleep till like 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. I feel like all of my friends, I'm surrounded by a great group of friends, which we all come from different cultures, so we kind of have to bend ourselves to understand each other, because if not, we would not be able to be as good of friends as we are. So it's great that I can explain myself to my friends, and any type of things that are different, we understand. But whenever I moved to Texas, it was kind of a culture shock, because whenever I was walking around, I was in high school, whenever I was walking around, people kind of just like give these awkward hugs, and if you try and lean in and like do the kissing thing, they kind of like back off, like this is my personal space. Whereas in my culture, you're very like close and very, very affectionate. In both my Italian and Venezuelan side, whenever you see anyone, you go up to them and you hug them, and we do cheek to cheek, and that's how you greet anyone. You know, regardless of even when you're being introduced to someone, you do you handshake, but still you do a cheek to cheek kind of kiss thing. But I moved here when I was 6, and then grew up in Florida, in Miami, and there I didn't have a problem with that, because the school that I went to, it was full of Venezuelans, Colombians, Cubans, and they had the same type of culture greeting that I did. But whenever I moved to Texas, it was kind of a culture shock because whenever I was walking around, I was in high school, whenever I was walking around, people kind of just like give these awkward hugs, and if you try and lean in and like do the kissing thing, they kind of like back off, like this is my personal space, whereas in my culture, you're very like close and very, very affectionate.
As you can see from our discussions and interviews with these 5 girls, it is possible to coexist and to cultivate deep friendships cross-culturally. Beyond that, the girls find gratification in sharing their own customs and traditions with each other, saying that it brings them even closer as friends to disclose cultural differences with each other.